Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to AstroNights. We have a fascinating presentation planned for you, and we're very excited that you chose to join us tonight. Our presentation will be about 20 minutes in length, after which we'll be able to address a few of your questions. Those of you participating on Zoom can post a question via the Q&A window. Be sure to hold your question until the very end because it just might get answered during the presentation itself. If you're joining us via YouTube, you should know that the Q&A feature is not available there, so just sit back and enjoy the program. We recommend placing your browser in full screen mode to have the best AstroNights viewing experience. All of the websites and resources that we'll be discussing during our program will be available on our website. So don't worry about rushing to write anything down right now. Just relax and enjoy the program, and the links will be waiting for you when you're ready. And now I would like to introduce you to our presenter, Mary McDonald. Mary is the Planetarium Programs Coordinator at the FSU Planetarium, and I know that she's very anxious to get started. Mary?
Hello, everyone. So yes, my name is Mary. I am the Planetarium Programs Manager, actually, at the Framingham State University Planetarium. And I am excited to have you all here tonight. So up on the screen right now is the website that Bruce just mentioned. I will be returning to that at the end of the program. So once again, anything we mention during the program tonight is going to be available on our website. So I'm now going to switch over. Actually, before we get started with anything, well, yeah, I'm going to switch over to a view of the night sky. So this is actually the night sky you are going to see at about 7:45 tonight. So right around the time that you are done today, this is approximately what the sky is going to look like. Okay. And before we get started with our program, I want to ask everyone a question. So the question should be coming up on your screen right now if you are participating by Zoom. So go ahead and don't take too much time. Just make your best guess. You might not know the answer to the question, but just take your best guess. Okay. I see some coming in, so I know it's working. All right, I'm going to give you 3, 2, 1, and that's all we'll say about that. Okay, wow, some interesting answers, and I'm not going to tell you the answer now. This is actually a question that does have an answer, but we'll come back to that later. All right, so what I want to do right now is I would like to take a look at what's currently in the night sky. And what you should be seeing on your screen is 2 really, really bright objects. Once again, this is about 7:45. So you should be seeing this object right here, which is the planet Venus. Let's label that one. So I have to remove the poll. Oh, the poll is gone. Okay, great. Okay, all right. So everybody, what I'd like you to take a look at, you have the planet Venus visible, and then I think it needs no introduction, but you should also be seeing the moon. So 2 really bright objects that are easily visible tonight. And if you'll notice, we're looking towards the south in this view. So maybe you don't know which way exactly is south when you first step outside, but just look around and see if you can find the moon, and then you're probably facing south. Now, if anyone joined us last time, we talked a bit about Venus, and I do promise that in the future, we are going to do some programs on the moon. So those are 2 objects that you'll hear more about, and also you can hear about in past videos, but neither are going to be our topic of focus today. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna let some time pass. So if you notice that about 7:45, the sky wasn't really dark yet. So if you really want to see a nice dark sky, you have to wait a little bit longer. So we're going to let some time pass until about 9 p.m. when it will be pretty dark. So once again, we can still see the moon and we can still see Venus over here. Let's leave that labeled. But today we're actually going to focus on looking at the northern sky. So once again, you might not know exactly which way is north and south when you step outside, but look around and see if you can find the moon. And if you can, just sort of turn all the way around. Now, right before we do that, one last thing I have to do is I'm gonna take myself out of this. So I'm gonna hide my video panel. And if you are in full screen mode, you should not really be seeing me, but maybe some of you will. It kind of depends on your device. But make sure you're in full screen mode now in Zoom if you are not yet. All right, so we're facing south. We're going to turn all the way around. Now, I don't need you at home to turn your body around. I'm actually going to turn the sky around for you. So hopefully this doesn't make anyone too dizzy. All right, great. So remember, we've gone to about 9 p.m. We're now facing north. And what we are going to do is I'm going to start by having all of you take a look at the sky. And we're going to start by looking for a very familiar pattern of stars, the Big Dipper. So some of you may know the Big Dipper. Some of you maybe know exactly what it looks like. So if you think you already know the Big Dipper, see if you can find it in the sky in this view that we have right now. And I want to really reach out to those of you that are watching together as a group or participating together at home as a group. I might ask a couple of questions here and there. And when I'm asking a question, I really want you to talk about it with each other. So if you're all looking at the screen right now and someone thinks they recognize the Big Dipper, see if you can point it out to the others. All right, are we ready to find out exactly where it is? Now, luckily for us, the Big Dipper is almost directly in the north right now. So if you look at the end down at the bottom and then go up, 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 up in the sky, that's where we're going to find the Big Dipper. And there it is right there. So great job to those of you that spotted it ahead of time. All right, now let's talk about the name, the Big Dipper. The name comes from the fact that the Big Dipper, this pattern of stars, looks like a big spoon that you would dip into some soup. So it has the handle part and it has the scoop. And right now it's kind of upside down as if it's dumping out whatever was in it. What I want us to look at, a couple of fun things you can look for with the Big Dipper. Start with the scoop. So start with the scoop, look at the last 2 stars in the scoop and follow those stars, follow those stars in a straight line. So starting with the last 2 stars in the scoop, follow them down towards the horizon in a straight line, and they point towards this star right here. So this trick is very well known because it used to be very important to know how to find that star. So knowing that, I'd like you to think, anyone think they have some idea which star that might be? And use some other clues in the scene. So hopefully some of you have guessed that we are looking at the North Star. So this star right here in the north is the star that we call the North Star, also known as Polaris. But Polaris is also not the star of our show tonight. So let's move on. All right, now we're going to take a look at the handle. So take a look at the handle of the Big Dipper, and I want you to look at the spot where the handle appears to bend. So I don't know if you can see where I'm pointing, but look at the spot where the handle appears to bend. Everybody take a look at that star right there. And what if I told you that there's actually 2 stars right there at that spot? Would you believe me? Well, let's see if you can take a closer look. One of the stars that's there is called Alcor, and the other one is called Mizar. See, I can't even show the 2 names at the same time because the 2 stars, in this view anyway, are really, really close together. But I challenge you to go outside, maybe not tonight. It's a little bit cloudy tonight, but anytime. The great thing about the Big Dipper is that it's always visible. And see if you can look at the bend in the handle and see if in the real sky you can see 2 stars in that spot. That's a little challenge for you after tonight when you're going outside to look at the real thing. All right, last but not least, we have the last star in the handle is a star called Alkaid. And that star, I don't really have a lot to talk about, but the reason I'm pointing out this star is because this is where I want us to look a little bit closer in the sky. So take a look at the star Alkaid, and I want you to look at the region right above it in space. So do you see anything there? Do you see anything in that space? I don't know about you, but I don't really see anything. It just kind of appears black to me. But there are tools that we can use to allow us to see a little bit better than just our eyes. So let's imagine that we're using one of those tools and we are going to get a closer look. So once again, we're looking at the space right above Alkaid, and we're going to turn towards that position. And we're going to zoom in and see if there's anything interesting that we didn't notice at first in that part of the sky. So if you're sitting with a group watching together, let the person next to you know if you notice anything interesting. How about now? Okay, I think we've definitely found something interesting here. And let's get in nice and close. And there we have it. We have found the true star of our show today, which is not a star at all. It's a galaxy far, far away. And this is what we're here to talk about today. I'm going to, in fact, actually brighten this galaxy up a little bit so we can get a nicer view. We'll talk a little bit about what a galaxy is and what makes this one special. But I first want to invite you at home. And again, this is you're at home. You can talk as loud as you want. Talk to each other about what you see here. What do you notice? What observations would you make about this object that we've observed? What stands out to you? So take about 30 seconds to talk about that with each other. Okay, now that you've talked about it a little bit, I'm going to ask you all a couple of questions. So I'm going to put up another one of those polls like you did at the beginning, but this one actually has 3 questions. So make sure you answer all of them and then hit the submit button at the bottom. Ready? If you are with a group today, make sure you're reading the questions to each other so you can all discuss. And once again, make sure you notice that there are 3 questions. And got to put in your answers for each one and then submit. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Submit your answers. Don't worry if you didn't get a chance. All right, so I'm going to stop that. And I will come back to your answers in just a moment, but I definitely am going to address some of these things. All right. So, a galaxy. What is a galaxy? I've already told you it's not a star, so you can tell it's different than just a star. It's a collection of stars, actually billions of stars, and we live in a galaxy called the Milky Way. So earlier, when we were looking at the night sky, all of the stars that we were seeing were all inside the Milky Way galaxy. But then, if our eyes could see things that were farther away, we would see that there are other galaxies out there, like this one, and many, many others. So now I want to talk about some of the things you noticed. So when I asked about color, what color stands out to you the most common answer was red and pink. So maybe that's not the most prevalent color, but I think that really stands out the most. So you're seeing these red and pink areas. And then I also want to challenge you to look at some of the areas that a few of you mentioned that appear white or blue. So let's first talk about the red and pink areas. So the red and pink areas, and oh, I should actually tell you a little thing about the image. So first of all, even if we could see this galaxy with our eyes, if it wasn't so far away, if we could see it with our eyes, it wouldn't look exactly like this. It would be close, but not exactly. This image was created by the Hubble Space Telescope, and I can tell you a little bit more about how the image was created later if people are curious. But for now, I want to tell you that the pink areas are areas where there is a whole bunch of gas. So the reddish pink areas are gas clouds, and those are where stars are being formed. So it's clouds of gas, but they're actually getting heated up because of the star formation that's happening, and they're glowing with this radiation that's red and pink. Now, I also mentioned to look out for blue areas. So the areas that appear blue, you're actually seeing stars there, and white areas too, individual stars. But the blue ones, those are showing you stars that are big, hot stars. And whenever you're seeing these big, hot blue stars, you know that they're newly formed. So both of these pieces of evidence, the reddish pink gas clouds and the young, newly formed blue stars, those are pieces of evidence that there's a lot of star formation going on in this galaxy. And that's one of the reasons we study galaxies, because we really want to know about how star formation happens. And that can also tell us about how it happens in our own galaxy. Okay, next, when it came to the shapes, the most common answers were pinwheel and snail. And that's probably because the galaxy that we're focusing on here, it has a name, by the way. It's called the Whirlpool Galaxy. So that's what somebody a long time ago thought it looked like, a whirlpool. The Whirlpool Galaxy is a classic spiral galaxy, which is the same type as the Milky Way. So this galaxy is actually showing us a great example of that type. But I don't know if any of you noticed, there's actually 2 galaxies in this image. So the spiral with all the red and pink and white colors, that's the Whirlpool Galaxy. But then right next to it, kind of hanging on the edge, is a second galaxy. And this one is just called NGC 5195, no fancy name. And the pair of them really shows you a great example of the different types of galaxies that can be found in our universe. Spiral galaxies like this one, and NGC 5195, which is basically just called an irregular galaxy. So it's got kind of an unusual shape. It's got kind of a deformed shape. And the reason that that's happened, scientists think, is because of the gravitational pull of the little one from the big one. So the Whirlpool Galaxy is pulling on this galaxy, the small one, and that's caused its shape to change. And that's another reason that we study galaxies, is because it helps us learn about how gravity works, because we have these really big objects that interact through gravity, and they're the biggest objects we can study. So it's a great opportunity to study this force. All right. So with that, I now want to return to your first poll answer. So yeah, let's go back to that, and maybe I can take a look at what people said. So let's go back to the first poll. Okay, so you should now all be seeing the poll results. And the most common answer for which of these objects is the farthest away from Earth was the Andromeda Galaxy. Milky Way Galaxy came in a little bit farther away, but not too many people guessed the Whirlpool Galaxy, which is totally fine because you might not have known what it was before tonight. Well, let's talk about the answer to this question. The answer to the question, by the way, is the Whirlpool Galaxy. So the first couple of items that are listed here, the star, Venus, the moon, I already told you that everything we saw in the night sky is inside the Milky Way Galaxy. So that means they're pretty close. And then the Orion Nebula, that was a tricky one. We didn't talk about that at all. But the Orion Nebula is something that's also inside the Milky Way Galaxy. And then the answer can't be the Milky Way Galaxy because we're part of it. And even if we talked about different parts of the galaxy, it still wouldn't be farther away than another galaxy. So that leaves just two. We have the Andromeda Galaxy and the Whirlpool Galaxy. Which one is far, far away? Well, you didn't know that ahead of time. No, now you're going to find out that the Whirlpool Galaxy is the farthest. It is 23 million light years away. The Andromeda Galaxy is only 2.5 million light years away. So obviously the Whirlpool's farther, 23 million light years versus 2.5. But what's a light year? Well, a light year is the distance that light travels in 1 year. So if I was traveling to the Whirlpool Galaxy at the speed of light, it would take me 23 million years to get there. The light that's traveling from the Whirlpool Galaxy to us takes 23 million years to reach us. So that seems pretty far. So I think we can really conclude that it is a galaxy far, far away. All right, now I want to say one quick thing about this. We couldn't see this galaxy in the sky. When we were looking at the Big Dipper, we couldn't see this. It is, though, possible, supposedly, to see the Whirlpool Galaxy with a small telescope or binoculars. However, it's pretty unlikely that you would be able to see it. Even if you could see it with binoculars, you probably would not see the spiral shape. So I just want to give you that little hint that you probably wouldn't see the spiral shape. It would just appear as a kind of a blur. All right, now we're going to zoom back out. Hopefully we end up back at the right place. All right, we're back outside again. And I just want to remind you of the place where the Whirlpool Galaxy was in the sky. I can actually point it out now. It's just about right there. That doesn't really help that much. It's just about right above the star Alkaid. So I mentioned that most of you will not be able to see it, even if you had binoculars or a small telescope, because of an effect called light pollution. So if you live near a large city, or any city really, there's a lot of lights on, it makes it difficult to see the faintest objects in the sky. Now I hope we understand at this point why this object is faint. It's faint because it's so far away. So it's possible supposedly to see it with binoculars, but only if you're in a place with very, very little light pollution. However, more powerful telescopes are able to image faraway objects like this one. And I'm going to tell you that it's actually possible to use one of these types of telescopes and control it from home. So there are robotic telescopes that you can control from home, and you can point them towards objects like the Whirlpool Galaxy and take beautiful images. And I think that that is probably a good time to take a little break, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the resources that we have collected for you on our website. So I mentioned that I would come back to the website, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So our main website is, and I'm going to share this with you. Our main website is cmcenter.org. So we have a lot of resources available for you here, and we've actually taken all of the most useful things for those of you who are learning at home and put them right on our front page. Now, the URL that Bruce shared with you earlier was the Dome to Home page, and that's where we're going to head right now. This is where you'll find all of the things related to programs like this one. So there's a separate subpage for the AstroNights events like this one, and see each event has their own page. This is our event page for tonight, and this is where you can find all of the resources that are related to what we talked about tonight. So if you want to learn more about the Whirlpool Galaxy, we have some resources there. And then what I was just talking about was you're able to control robotic telescopes to take high quality images of objects like the Whirlpool Galaxy. And that is through a program called Micro Observatory, which we have linked here. It's really meant for people who have no experience with this kind of thing, and you can create some really cool images. There are tutorials and other resources available. So everybody, remember, don't worry about writing things down. Just go to our website, and all of this stuff is here. So with that, I want to see if there are any questions from the audience. So those of you that are with us on Zoom, you can use the Q&A feature to ask questions. I probably should have got you started on that a little bit earlier, but at this point, go ahead, and if you have questions, put them in the Q&A. And I am going to go back to the night sky. Okay, questions. Questions from the group. Okay, a couple coming in. Oh, I have a great question that I am dying to answer. So this question is, when was the Whirlpool Galaxy discovered? So I'm going to go ahead and answer that one. Usually I don't have the answers to questions like that because I'm very bad with dates, but I happen to know the answer to this one. It was discovered in the year 1845. And when I say well, no, sorry, that's actually not exactly true. Now that I'm saying it aloud, 1845 is not quite right. It was actually discovered the previous century by Charles Messier. So that's why it has another name, Messier 51, which is the name it was given by Charles Messier when he put it in the Messier catalog. But he couldn't really tell what he was looking at. In fact, the Messier catalog was really originally just a way for that Charles Messier was cataloging objects in the sky that he knew for a fact were not comets. So that was the point of the Messier catalog. He just made a list of everything that's not comets. But anyway, so that was in the 1700s. But in 1845, it was observed in Ireland, actually, by an amateur astronomer named William Parsons. And at the time, he had the largest telescope in the world. So in 1845, the largest telescope was in Ireland. And he was the first, so he didn't discover it, but he was the first person to observe the spiral shape. And it wasn't just the first time the spiral shape had been seen with this galaxy. It was the first time anyone had been able to observe the spiral shape. So it was a really important discovery. However, in 1845, they still didn't know what a galaxy was really. So they called it a spiral nebula, and they weren't really sure whether it was inside our galaxy or outside of it. And that didn't become clear until much later, until the 1900s. So it's an interesting story of its discovery, and it's definitely very important to our understanding of galaxies in general. Okay. So a couple of questions. Oh, okay. I have a question here. What is the large reddish star east of Alcade? That is an excellent question. I'm going to answer that one. I probably should have said at the beginning that there are some things about the star field you're seeing that are a little bit unrealistic. One of the things is the size of the stars, and the other is the color. So it's a little bit exaggerated in terms of how big the stars appear and also how vibrant their colors are. So you are going to see you are going to see different colors in the stars, but not as intensely as this one. So this is a star it's called Arcturus. And the reason I knew that right away is because it's one of the brightest stars in the sky. It is sometimes called the spring star because it's the brightest star that's visible in springtime. So if you'll bear with me a moment, I'm just going to label that one for you. Arcturus. There we go. And it's really easy to find in the sky because this is another one that has to do with the Big Dipper. So if you look at the Big Dipper and you look at the handle, so remember how we use the scoop part to find Polaris? If you go to the handle and you follow the handle's not straight, it actually is curved. So the trick is it makes a curve, or in other words, an arc, and you follow the arc to Arcturus. Arc to Arcturus. So if you're out there looking at the Big Dipper, see if you can use the handle to figure out where the star Arcturus is, because it is one of the brightest stars out there. So, so it's probably going to be one that you notice. Okay, so let me go to another question. Thank you all so much for your questions. They're great.
Yeah, hi Mary, this is Irene. Thank you for a great presentation. I see a couple of questions that are about the Big Dipper that maybe you want to address, because I wonder if other people have the same question, a little bit misconception of a discovery of a Big Dipper.
Oh, okay. Yeah, a couple questions. When was the Big Dipper discovered? And yeah, this is an interesting question. And I often get questions similar to this. For example, when we're talking about the planets, like when was the planet Mars discovered? And it's hard to answer that because they've actually always been known in all of human history. So all of the things that you can see with the naked eye, people have always known they were there, and people have been looking up at the sky for as long as humanity's been around. So the stars that we can see and the planets that we can see easily don't really have a date for when they were discovered. Now, when it comes to the patterns in the stars, such as the Big Dipper, again, that's not really something that was discovered so much as it was invented. So the stars have always been visible, but the pattern that is seen is just something that was come up with at some point. And I actually don't know that I can tell you the exact origin of the Big Dipper. That's kind of more of a historical question. You know, when was maybe the first time it was mentioned? I do know the Big Dipper is sort of a nickname for this pattern that is not used all over the world widely. So it's used widely in the United States, but in other parts of the world, they call it different things. So I hope that answers that question. Okay. So, all right. I'm gonna take maybe 2 or 3 more questions. I have, what is the most interesting object in the sky you can see with a home telescope? That's a good question. And that's assuming that you have some knowledge of how to use your telescope. And I'm actually going to give a really honest answer to that. I would say that whether you're totally new to telescopes or you're an experienced astronomer, I still think the most interesting things to look at with a telescope are the moon and the planets, because you just get such wonderful views of them. The moon, I have a very small telescope that when I show people a couple of different things, they're always most amazed by looking at the moon, because with even a small decent telescope, you can just see so much detail on the surface of the moon, and you can really tell that it's another world. I think that people have also been really impressed by looking at Saturn. Even with a very small telescope, you can see the rings of Saturn. So I'm not saying every telescope, but the smallest high quality telescopes will allow you to see the rings of Saturn, and it never fails to impress people. It's hard to say much about deep sky objects like galaxies that we talked about today, because it really just is so difficult to see them if you're anywhere near a big city. But that's what's just so great about the planets and the moon, is that even in the middle of cities, as long as it's a relatively clear night, you can see them with a telescope. Okay, let's see. All right. Why is it so hard to see the whirlpool with the naked eye? Well, why is it so hard to see the whirlpool and most other galaxies with the naked eye? The number one reason is because of its distance. So it is actually a very huge, bright object. It should, why is a huge, bright object so difficult to see? It's bigger and brighter than a star or a planet because it's billions of stars. So even though it's such a bright, big thing, it's so far away that it's difficult for our eyes to see it. Just the same way when you look around you, objects that are very far away, eventually it's very difficult for you to see them in your everyday life. But then I mentioned that it is technically possible to see this object with binoculars. But why is that not always possible? Because when you're in a place with a lot of lights on around it, like a big city, it creates this effect called light pollution. And basically what that does is it makes the dark background not as dark. So there's not enough contrast between the dark background and the things you're trying to look at. And one of the resources that we gave on the page that you can check out later is a map that will show you how much light pollution there is in your area. And for those of you that are here in Eastern Massachusetts with me, you're gonna not be happy with what you see on that map. All right, by the way, I should probably turn my video back on. I think that might be nice. Okay, another great question that came in here, are there different shapes to galaxies? Yes, absolutely. And if I could just really quickly, I'll zoom in again on the one we looked at today, which let's see, I should be able to do that without too much trouble. So the one we looked at today, remember I told you, was actually 2 galaxies in the same view. So the big, pretty spirally one, the Whirlpool Galaxy, that is the shape that we call spiral galaxies. And then the one that's just right next to it, that looks just like a little blob right there, that's a different type of galaxy. It doesn't really fit into any category. So there's actually 2 primary categories. There is spiral galaxies and elliptical galaxies, which are basically spherical collections of stars, like big spheres with many stars. And then there are many galaxies that don't fit into either of those categories, and that's the irregular galaxies. But then even within spirals and within ellipticals, there are a lot of variations. There's billions of galaxies out there, and they all look very different from one another. And I want to direct you to one of the, especially those of you who may have young kids with you, one of the resources we shared was a fun activity that teaches you a little bit about different shapes of galaxies and describes how you can make a fun galaxy craft at home. So that's my recommend for a take home for some of you. But hopefully you've also got a couple of take homes of what you're going to look for in the sky. Okay, so really good questions. All right. So I have one more that I'm going to just address as best I can, and that is, I saw 2 bold dots. Were they planets? And that is a good question as well. I want to remind you again that the kind of the color and the size that you see with the stars here is a little bit exaggerated. So I can see why you might think that they are maybe planets, but sorry about that, everybody. Just about everything you can see in the sky in this view in the north are stars. So maybe one of the bright things you noticed was this bright star here that I've pointed out as the star Arcturus. And then let's see if we can point out anything else interesting in here. Oh, sorry. Is there any others that might be somewhat interesting? Okay, yeah, so there's another star right there. The next brightest star that we can see is the star Vega. That one would be a little bit tricky to see in the real sky, I would say, because it's so close to the horizon. But the question of were they planets, what you saw, I'm pretty confident in that just about everything you saw tonight was not a planet, except for the planet Venus, which we pointed out earlier. So remember, we're facing north when we looked at the Big Dipper. If you turn all the way around and face south, that's where we started. Remember, we saw the moon and Venus. So Venus is kind of setting in the west, but I always like to say face south to see the planets, but face south, but then look towards the west. So this is the only planet visible right now is Venus. If you want to see any other planets, the only other planets that will be visible are in the very, very early morning. And tomorrow is Saturday, so I don't know if anyone's going to be able to wake up early enough to see the planets. But the planets Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter are visible in the early morning, but seriously, very early. I haven't been able to catch them recently because of how early the sun is coming up. Okay, I think that I'm going to wrap us up for tonight. You know, we don't want these things going on for too long. But I want to remind everyone to check out our website. That's where you can find everything related to this program and so much more. And one thing you can share is you can share these pages for these events where people can also find the link to see it on YouTube after the fact. Finally, I also want to say that those of you that are on Zoom, when you leave, you should see a link to complete a survey. It really will not take long. It would be very helpful to us if you could do that. We would very much appreciate it. And then I think if you don't do it, or I think either way, you might still get the link by email as well later. All right, so I want to say thank you so much to everyone for joining us tonight. It's been a lot of fun. Please tell your friends about this program and everything available on our website. All right, have a great night, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.